development goals. At the latter part, I will talk about the why we should be uh, why we should link the project activities with sustainable development goals, right? So then I'll start with the kind of a very brief introduction to project, right? So everybody should understand. I know that you have done certain things about the project and project management. So this is going to be a very brief introduction to the project, right? A project is a kind of activity, right? So kind of activity that is having a kind of time scale, time limits, right? These are not very fixed. Sometimes we have very rigid and very fixed time schedule. Sometimes a kind of temporary one. We should have a starting day, and we have to have a kind of end day, right? And that activity is very unique and very specific, and brings about the changes. Yes, projects. We propose certain projects and project activities to change certain things we have, certain opportunities we have, right? And most of the time we propose certain projects for what? To solve the problems, right? Maybe a kind of economical related one, maybe kind of social, society related things, community related things, and sometimes maybe the political, environmental, ecological things likewise. So there are different disciplines we can do certain activities as projects. And while we are doing certain projects, there are certain uncertainties, and there are certain risk situations, because there are certain elements, components, so we cannot control, right? So some maybe some invisible things, some unexpected things. Therefore, doing a research, doing a project, kind of risky thing, right? These are the very brief things about the project. And what do you think about these things, right? Having a desk, building a desk. So are these things are projects or anything else, right? Implementing a new system and moving the lawn, cutting the surface grass cover, planning your wedding. What do you think? Planning a kind of convocation, student graduation. So are there going to be projects, right? So basically, when we have certain projects, right? When we are working with projects, so you heard about this project activities, right? So in the very initial stage, we develop certain objectives. So we do have broad objective, so which is directly linked with the project outcome or output, right? To ascertain the main objective, so we have certain specific objectives, right? We form specific objective. So that is because of the smooth running of the project activities, and ascertain the final outcome, the final goal of the project. So likewise, we plan these things, objectives, and project so-called outcomes, then the final output of the project, right? So you can think about these things, and having kind of planning a kind of a birthday party, it's going to be a project, isn't it? So you can think something about these things, and then try to understand these, whether these are going to be project or not, right? The most important thing, right? Even myself, I have done many consultancies and evaluate the projects. So many projects are failed, right? Why is that? So that is mainly because of the poor project management, right? Poor project management, right? So we talk about what is project management later, and sometimes lack of execute level support, right? So we in the top we do have managers, project managers. Sometimes we call principal investigators. So then the ground level, there are certain people working with project activities. So all these managers and these experts, they have a kind of certain responsibility to give the right guide, right advices, and even to evaluate and monitor whether the project activities are going on very well or not, whether they are in running behind the scheduled time, and whether they are sustaining the target outcomes, or what we call the deliverables, right? The wrong team members. We know that in our project, we do have a kind of multidisciplinary people. Yes, Arjani, do you have anything to ask? because she raised her hand.
No, sir, it's mistake.
No, no problem. Right. So if you need to clarify anything that during the talks, you can raise your hand, and I will stop and so make your clarification. Right. Along team members, we do have doing a project. Sometimes it can be an individual one, but many of the projects we do and we have done, so kind of a kind of group work, right? So that's why we do have many experts in different disciplines, right? Sometimes we have economy, sometimes we have environmentalists, sometimes we have the the expert in political sciences, and sometimes we have agriculturists, agronomists. So likewise, many people are there. But so the people and the expert areas should be matched with the project activities. So when we have the wrong people in our group, so they will direct different ways. Then we ended up with the dilemma, and so the wrong communications, wrong advices, wrong decisions sometimes we made. So therefore, we have to have the right people, right team for our project. Then poor communication. So sometimes that is the responsibility of project managers, right? Communicate the right directions, right information at the right time. If otherwise, so we end up with the certain problems in our project. And most important thing, many of the projects are not evaluating and monitor very well, right? Monitoring and evaluation, that is the most important one, right? So we know that in our projects, we do have certain plans. So there's a time scale, schedule. So we have to complete certain activities within certain period of time, right? So then managers, they may look at these things, whether they are certain or not. So sometimes some project activities may delay, right? They are running behind the schedule time. So likewise, sometimes, especially the budgets, right? So we had to do budgeting at the initial stage for each and every project activities. So sometimes the proposed budget may not enough to purchase certain items, certain equipment. So therefore, the monitoring and evaluation is very much important. That is paramount important. So whether the first thing, whether we are running the right pathway or else whether we are diverted into certain different directions, right? Now, risk management. I mentioned that doing a project is a kind of risky thing. There are uncertain situations. There may be invisible hands, right? Unexpected situations so might occur. Therefore, it's kind of risk. Therefore, to manage risk, we should have a kind of mechanism, right? So the poor risk management is one of the reason to fail many of the projects. So then, inability to manage inability to manage all these things, right? So then inability to manage charter. So we do have a charter. That means we line all the project activities, right? So activity 1 should be completed within this period. The activity 2 should be completed with this week. Likewise. So sometimes there are activities which we can undertake parallelly, simultaneously. So when we are unable to reach this the time scale, so many of the projects are failed. That's why many people they request extensions for the project, right? Extensions. So another 3 months, please, another 6 months, please, something like that. When we are unable, when we really delaying in the project activities, so we have to go for the extensions. So because of these reasons, many of the projects are failed and they are not succeeding very well. So then our main topic, the project management, right? Project management. So you know, management, that is basically dealing with different activities, right? Usually we call so-called activities, the planning, leading, monitoring, and evaluating. These things are related to management, right? The project management, the term refers to application of processes, methods, knowledge, skills, and experience to achieve the project objectives, right? So we know that we do have the broad objectives, And sometimes we do have specific objectives which are helping us to achieve the main objective, right? An objective propose certain outcomes, right? Outputs, right? Maybe in short period, maybe in the long period. So we have to achieve all these things. So when we reach to the particular outcome, when you achieve the particular outcome and output, so then we can call it, yes, we succeeded. So the management, project management refers to these things, application of processes, activities, so some methods, approaches, the knowledge, skills, and experience to achieve the project objectives. Right. In the project management, we do have these different phases, right? Different stages: initial stage, the planning and execution, monitoring and controlling, and the finally. So when we achieve the deliverables successfully, so we can close the project, right? So we look at the different phases one by one, right? Initial stage. This is the most important one, right? So the budgeting, schedules, and scope. So those things are the main variables. So in a particular the project, right? Sometimes with time we have to change the budget. Sometimes with certain consequences we have to change the schedule, and sometimes we have to change the scope of the project, right? So then the most important thing is identify the project stakeholders, right? At the initial stage, so we should identify, so which kind of people, which kind of parties you are engaged with, and the project is going to be beneficial for which kind of people, right? Which kind of institutes, something like that. And so the project is makes certain relationship with different parties. Those are the stakeholders. And sometimes some parties are there, they are providing their expertise, and they are providing their knowledge, right? Likewise, so we have to identify the stakeholders of our project. And initial stage, we have to prepare the project activities, right? Then the second phase, the planning, right? The important phase of any management, right? Not only the projects. So when we do management in any case, we have to plan, right? So plan is a kind of blueprint of the project, right? So it usually provides all the necessary information, right? So the required information, required data, required machinery, maybe the technologies, equipment, required expertise, right? So everything. So the plan gives in detail document about information about the project, right? And also most importantly, it provides budget, right? So during the implementation, so some project activities incur certain amount of money, right? For the first activity, for the second activity, so something like that. So tentatively, during the planning phase, we prepare certain budgets for project activities and schedule, right? So assume that during our project has certain work packages, right? So we have to complete work package 1 within 6 months, right? So then thereafter we had to start this work package 2, then another 6 months for work package 2, right? Work package 3, so we can simultaneously go with work package 1 and work package 2, right? So likewise, so we have to schedule everything. We have to schedule the activities. So then we can check, all right, the activity 1 is going on very well. The activity 2, so there are certain delays. And we have to accelerate. Then the managers, so they have to look at that activity 2, work package 2. So then give certain remedies to overcome those problems, maybe sometimes inconsistencies. So likewise, so we have to do a scheduling during the planning phase, right? Planning phase. The another one is a execution phase, right? So when the project activities are underway, and when we implement in the project activities, so we can start the execution phase, right? All the managers, most of the time managers are responsible for this phase, just to look at the project activities, whether these activities are going on very well. Sorry, whether the project is running very well, right? So then they have to communicate, right? This is progressing very well. So this needs certain modifications. This activity needs certain changes, something like that. So execution phase. So the managers, so they can give their advices, they can give their opinions, they can give their certain advices to change the ways, and prepare organizational adaptations of project deliverables, right? Sometimes, the project deliverables are the outcomes of certain activities, right? So then we had to look at whether we are achieving this deliverable in a satisfying way, or kind of, sometimes we are not satisfying about the project achievement of the project deliverables, right? So then during the execution phase, so these what we call the so-called managers, so they may look at all these things and communicate and do certain remedies, right? The most important one, the monitoring and controlling phase, right? Monitoring and controlling phase. So just propose all these the remedies to overcome the consistencies, right? Inconsistencies, the delays. Sometimes we have to hold certain activities. Maybe that is because of the financial problem. That is because of the human resource problem. So something like that. Sometimes, so say for example, like these social problems like COVID pandemic. Sometimes we have to stop certain activities and hold these things. So until the environmental getting into kind of favorable one. So likewise, so during the monitoring and controlling, these top level managers or the principal investigators, so they will look at, right, all these things, project activities in different work packages, or whether they are achieving their deliverables or not, right? Then sometimes they have to develop the amendments for the plans, right? Amendment for the plans, because they may identify that this is not good, and this is we will never achieve these things. Therefore, there are certain changes, right? Amendments during the monitoring and controlling. So we can do these things. Now, the important thing is, sometimes you may be a member of a kind of project. You may be the manager of the project. So anyhow, so your project so have to have certain kind of phrases like this: monitoring and controlling, monitoring evaluation, and the last one is the closing one, right? So sometimes your project may work for the client, right? So when the client is satisfying with you, that means your project is successful, right? You succeeded very well. Then so you can close all the files of your project. That is the end of the project, right? You may receive your final deliverable. Then you can stop your project works and project activities, right? And importantly, it's a kind of lesson to learn the things, good things and the bad things, right? Positives and the negatives of your project, right? So that may be a kind of the things lesson for the next project, right? So accordingly, so you can arrange, you can prepare for the next, right? You can prepare for the next project, right? Usually when we are dealing with the projects, right, at this phase, at the closing phase, so we are getting ready for another one, right? We are getting ready for another one. So, and also during this phase, we are evaluating the performance of our members, maybe the managers, maybe the other team members, and the principal investigators, and sometimes other stakeholders, right? So, and we will reward these things. And also the important thing is archive the project artifacts, right? That is the output of the project outcome, or what you call the deliverables, right? Those are the basic phases of the project management, right? So if you are dealing with any project, so you have to have these 5 phases. Otherwise, again, you will end up with the failed project, right? Right. So what are the advantages of having a kind of very formal project management system, right? Having these phrases. So better control of finance, physical, and human resources. You know that is dealing with the effectiveness and efficiency of allocating the physical and human resources, right? So if we do not have a proper plan, if we do not control and monitor all these things, right? So we'll end up with the trouble. Therefore, so having formal management system, having formal project management system, so we can allocate our resources, maybe the physical, human, or else the financial resources properly and effectively, right? And that will lead with the productivity, right? Productivity of our capital, productivity of our labor and other physical infrastructure, right? Then improve the customer relations. That means we have satisfied our client. So then, so you may have certain projects continuously because you have satisfied the consumer, right? Then it improve the consumer relations and the shorter the development times, right? So then if you have proper project management, no need to go for the time extensions and also lower the cost because your project is productive and it's lower the cost because you have achieved the effectiveness and the efficiency and higher quality and the increased reliability, right? Higher profit margins because you have cut down certain costs incurred to different project activities and improve the productivity, financial, physical, and human resources, productivity of these things, and the better internal coordinations, right? Suppose you are communicating very well the right information at the right time for the right persons, right? Even that is lower the cost, and that is very much helpful to coordinate all the project activities, right? Then ultimately hire worker or team members moral. Then they tend to work, they tend to join with you. Then the expert people they tend to provide the expert knowledge in another project, right? Likewise, these are some of the advantages of project management. All right, so that's all about the project and project management, right? Then I will be moving to the next phase of my talk, that is sustainable development goals. That kind of trending topic nowadays. Many of the people, experts, they are talking about sustainable development goals, right? So before getting to sustainable development goals, as you heard these things, the Millennium Development Goals. We had Millennium Development Goals before the Sustainable Development Goals, right? So then even you know these things that we expected outcomes of the Millennium Development Goals. So they were unseen, and therefore, so these experts propose another goals, so-called global goals or sustainable development goals. So they in the the Rio Plus 20 summit. So this United Nations, they propose these sustainable development goals, so which are about to achieve certain in 2030, right? 2030, right? This is the basic definition for sustainable development, right? So when we achieve our development, we have to think about the future as well, right? The future as well. So when I heard about this sustainability term, so I feel that that is about the continuity, right? The system should be continue for a certain period of time, and systems should have the ability to give the same welfare, same service, same thing, not only for our generation as well as our future generations. So therefore, this definition that is very much important. It gives the basic idea behind the sustainability and sustainable development. The sustainable development refers to development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So if you browse this sustainable development, the term in Google, so you may find different many, I think more than 100 definitions, right? In different, because the sustainability is very specific for a location, maybe specific for a project. Sometimes that is maybe specific for a nation, right? But this is the very common and very simple definition of sustainable development. The purpose I put this in this presentation because sustainable development goals directly dealing with the sustainable development, right? So we are going to achieve certain things in future, but we cannot not the things satisfying ourselves, right? Not only ourselves, but our future generations. So they will satisfy themselves in future, right? Sometimes we have to do certain sacrifice. We have to sacrifice certain things, right? We have to sacrifice certain things because we are ensuring that our future generation and future generations, so they even they have the ability to feel all these things, right? Feel the sense of this environment, right? And feel the benefits, get the benefits of economic prosperity, right? And get the benefits of social equity, right? And feel the benefits of justice, something like that, right? So sustainability, you know these things. These are the very basic things of sustainability. Sustainability basically dealing with these three pillars: social, environmental, and economic. Social sustainability, we know that in our community, society, we do have a kind of social system, right? Social system. The social system provides certain things. Social system provides certain things for the community or these so-called human beings, right? So when you achieve the social sustainability, so we ensure that the system, the social system can provide the same service, social services for our generation as well as the future generations, right? So with related to environment, we know that environment provides ecosystem services, right? Environmental services, right? So then, so when we ensure the environmental sustainability, right? So then we can say that our environment, our ecosystem still has the ability to provide those environmental services for our welfare as well as the welfare of our future generation, right? Basically, economic system, right? Basically, we are dealing with the production, right? Production of what? So basically, with the basic things we need as human beings, maybe the food and fiber, the water, food and fiber, water, and other, maybe the shelters, the basic needs. The economic system to production of these things, basic needs, right? So when we achieve the economic sustainability, right, we can say that our economic system still has the ability to produce these things, produce the basic needs for our generation as well as the future generation. That's why I'm usually, when I heard the sustainability term, that is about the continuity, right? Our social system is having certain abilities to proceed. Our environment, our ecosystem is having certain capacities to produce environmental or the ecosystem services continuously, right? Our economy is growing well. Our economic system is growing very well, right? So because it can produce the same welfare for our generation as well as the future. So those are the things basically dealing with sustainability, social sustainability, environmental sustainability, and economic sustainability. All right. So then when I jump into this, the main topic, our sustainable development goals, right? Sustainable development goals, also called as a global goals, right? The United Nations, they proposed during the Rio Plus 20 summit. There are about 17 sustainable development goals, which are about to ascertain by 2030, right? 2030. So from 2015, we have spent certain time period. So now in 2019, we received the a kind of progress report about the achievement of these 17 sustainable development goals, right? So all these 17 goals so are linked with the previously mentioned 3 pillars: social, economic, and environmental sustainabilities, right? So we'll talk later all these sustainable development goals one by one, right? So these sustainable development goals are directly dealing with some of the critical elements, critical factors of the sustainability, just like the poverty, hunger, some social conflicts, right? Sometimes the what we call the equal power for all the people, right? Prevent the discrimination, something like that, right? And the creativity, know-how, technology, and the financial resources from all the society is necessary to achieve the sustainable development goals, right? So sustainable development goals is not for a kind of specific generation, right? Sustainable development SDGs is not for a kind of region, not for a specific country, right? Not for a specific province, right? Even in individual people, individual persons, individually we can we can work for the sustainable development goals. We can have certain activities so which are dealing with the sustainable development goals. Sometimes as a group, so we can work for achieving these sustainable development goals. And sometimes as an institute, sometimes as a country, nation, right? So we can work for these things. And as a region, like let's say South Asia, right? European region, something like that. We can work, sometimes we can work as a region, group, or sometimes these are very individualized things, right? Anyhow, we should understand that the sustainable or the development goals or the sustainability is sometimes location specific, right? Location specific, right? If we are dealing with agriculture, so that is the sustainability that is very specific to low country or wet zone. And sustainability that is very specific to dry zone. And sometimes sustainability that is very specific to the farming system in European region. So something like that. Accordingly, so we have to customize all these things. We can change, and we can change the opportunities into certain improvements, right? If I go one by one, the sustainable development goals very quickly. The first one is no poverty, and all around the world there are some 136 million people still they are in the extreme poverty. Sometimes these millions of people, they have to depend on $1 per day, right? Imagine how they satisfy themselves. So then they have to sacrifice many things. Therefore, the no poverty goal that is targeting the targets, the sustainable development goals, they are having yes 169 targets, right? 169 targets, and they're having 247 indicators, right? The 17 SDGs, they are having 169 targets and 247 indicators, right? Indicators. And the target of this first goal, that is to reduce at least by half of the proportion of men, women, children of all age living in extreme poverty, right? In extreme poverty. The next one is zero hunger, right? So that is basically dealing with the food security, right? The overcome these food insecurities, especially in developing countries, right? Many people, more than I think 821 million people, right? So they are depending on, they are undernourished, right? In 2017, actually. So that this figure may be a kind of a higher value in 2022 at the moment, right? Importantly, over the 90 million children under 5, right? So they are dangerously underweight. The under 5 children, they are the most affecting people, the group of people, right? So this sustainable development goal targets to end all forms of malnutrition, including achieving by 2025 internationally agreed targets and stunting and wasting the children under 5 years of age, right? Anyhow, the SDG, this SDG targets to overcome the hunger, right, all around the world, and the good health and well-being. The other one, the third goal, right? We know that even at the moment we do have certain problems, right, with the importation of these pharmaceuticals and especially the drugs, right? Then and also another thing is having the non-communicable diseases among us, right? Non-communicable diseases, and also there's the burden of spreading HIV even among the children at the moment, right? At the moment. So then there are certain things we should initiate to prevent all these things and overcome these issues, right? That's why we are having good health and well-being, right? So that's a 31 years gap between the countries with the shortest and longest life expectancies, right? Life expectancies. So usually our life expectancies is about 65 to 70 years, maybe, right? So this goal targets to reduce the global maternal mortality ratio at least to less than 70 per 100,000 live births, right? So the maternal mortality, the goal is targeting to reduce the maternal mortality ratios, right, by 2030. Quality education, the fourth one, right? Quality education. So most of the time, many of the developing countries, right? So the budgetary allocation for the education, that is very much poor and that is very much less, right? Fortunately, in our country, like our country, so we are having a good rate of literacies, right? Good literacy rate we do have. Sometimes the children from the poorest households, right? So they had to leave, right? They had to escape from the schools, right? Because they do not have the proper so ways and means to go for the school and have a good knowledge, education, right? So then this goal targets to ensure that all girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education, right? Quality primary and education for all, provide the access to quality primary and secondary education is the main target of this fourth goal, quality education for all. Gender equity, actually that is we cannot see kind of very discrimination of women at the moment, right? Even some countries there are some kind of group, some ethnic groups are there, so they are discriminating the women, right? Sometimes we can see the sexual violence and some of the exploitations, right? So anyhow, all the people have all the rights, right? Equal rights for everyone, right? Basically giving a certain power, especially in decision making, right? So having certain power for the women, especially decision making, right? And this goal targets to all to eradicate all the forms of discrimination against women and girls everywhere, right? Everywhere. The sixth one, clean water and sanitation. No, we know that there's a problem with the quality water, especially for the drinking purpose. We do have very less percentage, right, for the drinking percentage of water for the drinking purpose and other sanitation, right? So then about 844 million people still lacked basic drinking water, right? So they do not have proper access to clean water for drinking purpose. Even Sri Lanka, we can see some of the parts of the country in north side, right? Sometimes east side. So some people, they do not have access to this clean water for their drinking purpose and other sanitations, right? So this goal targets to achieve universal and equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water for all, right? Say, for example, if you purchase a water bottle, 1 liter, at the moment it's costs about 150 rupees, right? You can imagine one drop of water, how it is valued, right? There, but if we achieve this sustainable development goal, the sixth one, clean water and sanitation, so there won't be such a problem in future, right? Then the seventh one, the affordable and clean energy. We know that there's a huge demand for the energy, and that is cause another problem, increase in demand for the fossil fuels, right? Because most of the developing countries, they burn all these diesel and other petroleum or other the forms of crude oil to generate electricity energy, right? So that create many problems, right? Sometimes exploitation of these crude oil reservoirs, and sometimes emissions of carbon dioxide and other things can cause to increase the global temperature at average atmospheric temperature, right? So then there are maybe certain issues, right? Like uh, pollution of the environment and global warming, and sometimes loss of biodiversity, loss of habitats for the animal. So something like that. Anyhow, so with the increasing population, it has increased the demand for the energy, right? Demand for the energy. So especially the industrial countries and developed countries, right? So they have certain mechanism to overcome these things, but developing countries, developing world, so we do not have mechanism like Sri Lanka. So still we don't have kind of production of like biodiesel, biofuels, right? Using this decomposed material. But the developed countries, industrialized countries, although they are having a huge high demand for the energy, so they have certain mechanism to overcome all these things. But this goal targets to this one, ensure the universal access to affordable and reliable and modern energy services, right? So that may be renewable energy sources, right? Then decent work and economic growth, having decent work and economic prosperity in future, right? You know that so many of these youngsters, so they are unemployed or sometimes they are underemployed. The job is really not matching with the education, the level of the expertise and the expectations. Therefore, many of the young people, so they are underemployed or sometimes unemployed, right? The number of unemployed people, it has been projected. It's more than 1 million people. They are being unemployed, right? So therefore, this goal targets to increase the what we call the GDP, right? Gross domestic production, the whole production value we produce within our territory, right? So then if we have a good figures with GDP, that means we produce something, right? So a considerable amount we produce within our territory. That means it creates certain employment opportunities, right? It creates certain employment opportunities. So while we are having a kind of good economic growth, right? So we can reduce that number, what we call the unemployed people, right? We can reduce that number, right? That is the main target of that sustainable development goal. That is at least 7% gross domestic production growth per annum, right? 7% growth. So then you can imagine, so our GDP growth rate, right? And our GDP growth rate. And so when you are going to achieve these 7%, right? right? Please refer to national statistics. The ninth one, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, right? More than 4 billion people still do not have access to the internet, right? So suppose suddenly everything, all access to internet, so that is closed, and certain barriers they have, maybe the government put certain barriers for the internet. So what will happen to you, right? We are highly engaged, we are highly keep in touch with the internet all the time of our life, therefore, so it's becoming a kind of essential thing of our life. But 4 billion people still they do not have access to internet, right? Then kind of indicator about this goal. Then this goal targets to develop quality, reliable, and sustainable and resilient infrastructure, including regional infrastructure, so to support economic development and human well-being, with a focus on affordable and equitable access to all. Like when we develop this kind of infrastructure, then so the industry will pop up and the new innovations will come into the society, right? Then people will engage with the internet and all these things, something like that. Then we'll have kind of very prosperous society. So then reduce inequalities, right? Reducing inequalities. So you know that is we call the champagne glass theory, right? Champagne glass theory. You can imagine the shape of the champagne glass, just like a funnel, right? Funnel shape. You know that the top part that is more open, and the bottom part is more narratable. So believe me, in our world, the 80% of income, 80% of wealth, 80% of the income, so that is goes to 20% of the human population, right? So what the remaining 20% of the income, right, that is among the 80% of the population, just like a kind of funnel or champagne glass, right? So the many of the people around the world, they exhausted. That is because of poor income inequalities, right? Unequal income, right? Sometimes unequal rights, all these things. Anyhow, this goal targets to ensure the equal opportunities and reduce inequalities of outcome, right? The 11th one, I'm getting into the end of this talk, right? The sustainable cities and communities. So you know that even nowadays, many of the people, they immigrate, right? Even locally, migrations happen from rural areas to urban, right? So there are certain push and pull factors, right? There are some push factors, right? Go and settle in urban, right? There are certain pull factors, right? We are having a good infrastructure, we have good resources, we're having plenty of employment opportunities. Then we are having good wage rates. All right, then so then right, come and settle in urban cities, right? So we can see more and more people, they are scattering around the urban cities, and that is increase the demand for different things, maybe for health, well-being, hygiene, medicines, maybe land, maybe education and schooling, right? So housing, especially for the settlement, right? So therefore, we have to have sustainable cities and communities in future with urbanization, right? With urbanization. So many challenges exist to maintain the cities in the way that countries to create jobs and prosperity while not sharing the lands and resources, right? With the increase of human population, we know that availability of per capita land, that is decreasing, right? We know that we don't have another planet B, right? We have only this planet, right? So the land is not expanding, right? Once increase the human population, so the per capita land availability, that is decreasing. That is obvious. That is, even we can see the trend in future as well. So therefore, we have to have a kind of mechanism to face these things in future, right? That is contingency planning, right? We have to have certain plans. So that's why we have to have sustainable cities and communities, right? For that, this goal targets to ensure the access for all to adequate, safe, and affordable housing and basic services and upgrade slums. Upgrade slums, right? There may be slums, but upgrade slums. So we'll see in future, right? Ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns, right? Changes in the dietary habits, right? Think about yourself, how it has been changed over the time, right? We really depend on fast foods and pre-cooked item, instant foods, right? We change our dietary habit. Sometimes it change the demand for the what we call the meat products, right? Rather depending on this food, what we call the uh, vegetable fruits and other things, right? Plant-based foods, we highly depend on animal-based foods, right? We have changed our dietary habits, right? So then sometimes it increased the food waste, the patterns of consumption, right? Food production patterns also change, right? So too much waste is being wasted in every country every day, right? So if you compute the food waste in a particular country, so that may be enough to feed another nation, food waste, right? Therefore, many of the nations, they have certain mechanism to reduce the food waste and also to convert these food waste into another opportunities, maybe to produce biodiesel, maybe to produce fertilizer, composting, certain things. This goal targets to achieve the sustainable management and efficient use of natural resources, right? Efficient use of natural resources. That is going to be the target by 2030. Another one, climate action. We know that climate change is happening, right? Changes in these rainfall patterns, right? Temperature and air waves and all these things are changing, right? Sometimes we cannot see the seasonal patterns of rainfall. That is because of this climate change, and that is because of the man-made things, right? And we have to experience this climate change, and accordingly we have to adapt. Accordingly, we have to adapt for these changing weather patterns, rising sea levels, right? Increasing the atmospheric temperature, right? All these things, right? And this goal target to integrate climate change measurements into national policies, strategies, and planning, right? Adaptation for climate change, right? The actions we can integrate with national policies and other strategies. And life below water, conservation of this marine ecosystem, right? And coastal areas, right? Because those areas of the marine life and marine ecosystem that is threatening because of this acidification, right? And the contaminations, other contamination is chemical and other things, and the plastic pollution, right? Plastic pollution that is increasingly happening, right? Therefore, we have to conserve these marine life. We have to protect these coastal areas, right? So we don't have much more time to achieve this goal, right? By 2025. So they are targeting to prevent and significantly reduce the marine pollution in all the kinds, all the forms of marine pollution. So we are about to prevent, right? Particularly from the land-based activities, including marine debris and nutrient pollution. So the life on land, that is basically dealing with the biodiversity, right? Biodiversity. So we have to cut and clean the forest, especially for the human settlement, right? Deforestation is significant at the moment, right? And also that is due to salinity of the top layer of soil, right? Desertification is happening. With that, it reduces the per capita arable land, right? Cultivable land. That is because of desertification and deforestation, right? And also certain things are happening which can cause for human health, right? Anyhow, the desertification and the deforestation that is negatively influence for the livelihoods of people, right? Millions of people, they are suffering, right? They are, even they are fights against the poverty because of these things, right? So we have to conserve our biodiversity, right? We have to conserve our life on land, right? We have to protect all these things. Otherwise, we'll be trouble in future, right? So if we are good enough, if we are good enough to face these things, right, we'll survive. If otherwise, so we'll disappear, right? Like Darwin says, right? So the most fit organized organisms, so they will survive. If otherwise, so others will disappear in future, something like that. Anyhow, so we had to protect, conserve all the life on land. So this goal targeting the urgent and significant actions to reduce the degradation of the natural habitats, right? Loss of natural habitat, that is more significant, and hold the loss of biodiversity, right? So we have to protect all the forms of biodiversity, right? Peace, justice, and strong institutions. That is the 16th goal, right? So we can see injustice in all the societies, right? So then sometimes we have to ensure the peace for all the people, all the nations, all the ethnic groups, and strong institutions, right? Most women fear working along in their neighborhoods at night, right? These things are very, very common issues in some sort of regions, right? In some countries, they are even all the time. The women, a woman can work, a woman can go around, a woman can play around, right? But some certain regions, certain countries, certain places are there still, so that protection is not there, right? They are really exhausted, right? Anyhow, this the 16th SDG, that is targeting significantly reduce all the forms of violence and related death rates everywhere, right? Ensure peace, justice, and strong institutions everywhere. And the last one, so the partnership for all the goals, that is the most important one, right? Partnership. So each and every, sometimes these goals are directly interact with each other, interrelated, right? Sometimes one goal that is related, that is correlate among different sustainable development goals, right? Even this is just like a network, right? Sometimes one goal is, so when we achieve one sustainable development goal, may helpful for achieving another one or another couple of sustainable development goals. Therefore, partnership, that is very much important, right? Partnership of all the nations, partnership among all the nations at all the regions, that is very much important. Partnership in between developing countries and most industrialized and developed countries, that is very much important, right? So the second point, debts to gross national income ratio rose sharply in sub-Saharan African countries, right? In sub-Saharan African countries, so even we can see their debtness that is growing very fast, right? So then that's why the developed countries, they give certain subsidies for them. Even at the moment we are getting, even yesterday, before yesterday, we received certain subsidies, some medicines from China. So likewise, the people there, those who are having certain wealth, right? So they can dedicate certain things for those who are lacking, those who are in a kind of poor situations, right? That's the partnership. And the partnership interrelations among the different goals, that is even very much important, right? This goal targets to mobilize additional financial resources for developing countries from multiple sources, right? That is very much important, for us as well as a country, Sri Lanka. Right. Then another important one, there should be a kind of debate on this topic, why the project management should be correlated with sustainable development goals, right? So I'm taking that 2019 Sustainable Development Goal Progress Report, right? Progress report. So just like the Millennium Development Goals, some of the outcomes are unseen. Still, we cannot see whether we are achieving all these things or not, right? Still, we have a kind of dilemma. So some targets, some outcomes, so we can see, but so some are still running behind the schedule, and sometimes so I don't know, we will never see the outcomes, right? The most important thing, we can make progress on the sustainable development goals. So according to this progress report, we can make progress on the sustainable development goals, but we need to step it up now, right? We have to step it up, right? Sometimes we have to initiate, sometimes we have to do certain implementations. If otherwise, the same thing may happen, just like Millennium Development Goals, right? If I summarize the good things and the bad things up to 2019, right? Up to 2019, between 1990 and 2015, extreme poverty dropped to just 10%, right? Then the child deaths were nearly cut in half between 2000 and 2017, right? Access to electricity is increasing, right? Even we in nearly, I think, more than 95% of the Sri Lankan people, they are having power, electricity, right? These are the good things. The proportion of the people living in urban slums dropped from 46% to 23%, right? Since 2010, that the world has more than double the amount of ocean water that is protected. All right. So we have ascertained certain thing, right, up to 2019. But the bad things, still 1 in 9 people in the world are undernourished, right? Sometimes, I don't know, our people will get into the same basket in the future, right? We are expecting a kind of food insecurity and situation, all right? And more than half of the children and adolescents are not meeting minimum standards of reading and math. And that is about the literacy, education. No country in the world is on track achieving gender equity by 2030. No country, right? No country, right? Not achieving the gender equity. And 3 billion people do not have the basic facilities to wash their hands at home, right? That is about water and their sanitary, right? Sanitization. Young people are 3 times more likely to be unemployed than adults, right? Youngsters, they have to have kind of employment opportunities, but 1 out of 3, right? Sorry, the young people are 3 times more likely to be unemployed than adults, right? That means adults are having jobs, but youngsters, so they are in a kind of critical situation. Then material consumption is on the rise up to 92.1 billion tons in 2017. They look at the percentage, 254% increase since 1970. Another one, a critical one, greenhouse gas emission, increasing carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, right? Record high in 2017 and are now 146% higher than pre-industrial levels, right? So then how we can make certain remedies to overcome these bad things? So yes, we can happy about the good things we achieve at the moment, but the bad things, what shall we do for these things? These are only few things, but many of the things are running behind, right? So therefore, when we plan right? When we think about the project management, for each and every project activity, so we have to think about, we have to look at how we can link these project activities with these 17 number of sustainable development goals, right? Suppose you are about to start a business, right? So you are about to start, you are going to be an entrepreneur and you are about to start your own business. That's the kind of project, right? Right, how these project activities link with different sustainable development goals in order to achieve the no hunger, no poverty, right? And maybe how do I protect the marine ecosystem? How do I protect the biodiversity, right? Something like that. So importantly, what we have to do is we have to link the project activities with these sustainable development goals, right? Sustainable development goals. So sometimes when we are competing with the funding sources for our projects, right? Sometimes they may ask, so what is the rationale behind achieving sustainable development goals with your project activities, right? After the projects, when you succeed your project, so what is going to be the contribution for the sustainable development or sustainable development goals, something like that. So therefore, so when you are preparing project, when you are proposing, when we are developing plans for the projects, so we have to look at, so in all the means and ways, how we can achieve, how we can contribute to these different sustainable development goals. Sometimes maybe few sustainable development goals, sometimes you might be ended up with many contributions, right? Right, you may achieve certain targets and indicators of sustainable development, right? So that the basic correlation behind, that should be the basic correlation behind your project activities, project management, and the sustainable development goals, right? With that, I'm going to wind up this talk, and again, thank you very much for inviting me for this, and I hope so you had certain things and I discussed certain important thing with you, and so I took more than 20 minutes with the proposed time anyhow. So if you have any idea, any opinion, anything to clarify, and anything about this session, you can now unmute yourself and you can raise your voice. So if otherwise, with the permission of Devindi, we can wind up the session. Thank you very much. Devindi or Hansika, is it all right to wind up the session?
Guys, now we are open for Q&A session. You may ask all the questions. You have to clear your doubts now.
Excuse me, sir. Hello.
Yes.
So I have a question. According to present situation of the country, which sustainable goals you think that should be mostly focused for our future projects?
Yes. I think, may I know your good name, please?
I'm Manisha.
UOC alumni.
Manisha.
Manisha, right. Thank you very much. So at the moment, we do have a kind of very critical situation economically and even politically. So that is about the governance and sometimes environmentally, right? The resource exploitation. Therefore, so we are threatening in all three pillars: economic, society, and environment. Even you can see in the news, we sometimes the social problem we never heard, right? So the children, so they are under threat, right? Women, they are under threat, right? Because of this instability in politics and instability in economy. Therefore, so there's no very specific goal out of these 17. The 17s are pretty much matched with the present situation of the country, right? If I take the first one, no hunger, the second one, no poverty, right? You can see with this huge rate of what we call this inflation, many people are suffering, right? Even they have to depend on sometimes 1 or 2 minutes per day, right? And that is the hunger is there still, right? Please remember that we do have hidden hunger, right? Hidden hunger, right? Nobody is, right? I didn't have the breakfast, my lunch, they will never talk, right? So that's a kind of very personal thing of our people, personal things. Anyhow, so we have to deal with all these 17, right? All these 17, right? Have you experienced the changes in these our pupils, right? School children, even university student? That is because of the online education, right? So these days I'm experiencing the kind of very significant transformation of the behavior of these students, university students as well, and even school children, pupils, right? So therefore, the present situation, that is almost the things done, many things in different ways and means, to education, to poverty, even sometimes personal problem, personal or the family life, the general well-being of the people. Therefore, we have to deal with all the SDGs, deal with all the SDGs. So I cannot say very specifically, all right, out of these 17, this is the most important one, right? So all these things are equally important, right? Proportionately important to consider and make certain actions, to make certain actions and implement all these things, right? So you know that from the former governments, they propose many things, right? The good governance might be the Mahinda Chintana and the stars of prosperity, right? So please try to have all these documents and look at all the people. They all always talk about the sustainable development, right? They propose many actions, but never happen, right? Now we are in a kind of good platform, good situation, even to look at and go after and look at all these things and do a kind of what we so-called system change, right? System change should be to implement certain things towards sustainable development goals, not in other ways, right? So that is my idea and my answer for your questions. So we have to think about equally in all the questions, right? Suppose clean water. If you go to Kilinochchi, Vavuniya, some part of Jaffna, and like the border of the North Central province, like Sripura, Parakrampura, and Batiklo area, right? Actually, they do not have water for drinking purpose, right? So for sanitation, therefore the problems are very threatening certain group of people, right? As a nation, so we had to look at all the sustainable development goals equally. If otherwise, all the things may come into our shoulders very soon, right? Very soon. The problem is the general public, right? These general people, they are the most affecting and they are suffering. That is that is my worry about all these things. Right. Thank you, Manisha, for your question. So I guess you are satisfied with my answer.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Manisha, and thank you so much, Mr. Sampath. So now we come to the end of this valuable session. Now I cordially invite to Devindra Rodrigo to give vote of thanks.
A very good evening to you all. Today we have conducted the first session of Pioneer One program. So I would like to convey my heartfelt gratitude to our guest speaker for today, Mr. S.P. Disanayaka, a lecturer, Department of Agricultural Systems, Faculty of Agriculture, Rajaratnam University. Sir, thank you very much for the time and effort you took to share your knowledge with us. And thank you very much, Leo Ranveer Samarasinghe, District President for Leo District 306A1, and Leo Malmikuruppu, District Vice President for District 306A1 for your guidance and support. And last but not least, all the participants for today, for joining with us today. Thank you very much and good night.
Right. Thank you very much.